guys, I'm Trina and today I am reviewing the Fifth Wave trilogy by Rick Yancey. This is going to be a full series review and it will be spoiler free. If you have any questions about this series that I don't cover in this video, don't hesitate to ask me down below. The books in this series are The Fifth Wave, The Infinite Sea, and The Last Star. This series is young adult and I would classify it as post-apocalyptic survival genre. It is about an alien invasion that has taken over Earth. The aliens are slowly killing off all humans and there have been 4 different waves of attacks so far, and we are following a group of survivors as they are gearing up for what the 5th wave, the 5th attack, might be. What makes this world really complicated was that the 4th wave of attacks was where the aliens put alien beings into human bodies. You can't tell humans apart from the aliens anymore, so who can you trust in this type of world? I want to briefly talk about the writing, the characters, and the plot. I don't have much to say about the writing because in general I feel like I'm pretty bad at describing writing. It's not flowery writing, it's not super metaphorical or anything like that. One thing I did notice about Yancey's writing is that he writes the voices of each character with different tenses. So for instance, Cassie mostly writes in first person point of view past tense. However, the character of Zombie narrates in first person point of view present tense, and we also have a couple of characters that narrate in third person point of view instead of being the one telling the story. So Yancey did kind of play around with narration styles, and I feel like he did this to kind of distinguish each character. As far as the characters, I think there are, around 5 really main characters, but we have 2 main points of view in the first book. We have Cassie's point of view. Cassie is a lone survivor. She survived the first 4 waves of alien attacks with her father and her brother, and when the story starts out, she is all alone, and we get some flashbacks of her telling what happened to her father and brother, and she is just trying to survive on her own in the woods. Who can she trust when she comes across other people? When she gets injured, can she survive on her own? And she's on a mission to find her little brother and figure out what is really going on. The other main point of view we have in the first book is from a character whose nickname is Zombie. He is at this military base where they are basically training up these young kids and teenagers to be the resistance against the alien attacks, and the military actually has this inside information on the aliens and their technology and why they might be here. So Zombie as a character gives us this insider point of view. He knows a lot more about what is going on, or he thinks he knows a lot more about what's going on than Cassie does, and she just has no idea. She's on her own, doesn't know what's happening. And of course these 2 storylines do connect in some ways, and there are other characters that both Zombie and Cassie meet along the way, and eventually we do get points of views from those characters in books 2 and 3. I did really love Cassie. She was my favorite character. She is the reason that I really fell in love with the story in the first place, because she's the point of view that the first book opens up with, and I actually had no idea it was a multiple point of view book until I got to that first section break and was like, who is this other character? I thought this was just going to be Cassie's book, But I really did love Cassie in the beginning, especially because of this whole survival thing. As far as the plot, I did think overall it's pretty fast-paced because you have some really interesting things going on. There are a lot of twists and turns and curves that happen along the way as you're finding out more about the aliens. But in my opinion, the first book is really solid and the last book is a really solid finale. I liked the plot of the last book. It was very action-packed. The characters were actually working towards this goal that they had been planning all along, and it didn't seem like anything was a cop-out at the very end of the series. The second book, however, I feel like the plot was the weakest in the second book. It really was just a bridge so that you could see what had happened after events of book 1 and then kind of gear up for where the series was going to go in the end. So the first book was my favorite, and the second book was my least favorite out of the 3 books in this trilogy. As far as some of the themes that this plot really explores are, first of all, there's that survival theme, and my favorite part of this series, my favorite theme that it explores, is humanity through the eyes of another being. So like I said, the aliens were kind of inserting themselves into some human bodies, and so through this, some of these aliens are actually learning what it is to be human. Humans actually have emotions, humans have a lot of care for each other, and so that to me is just a perspective that I love reading about. It makes me really appreciate things that I take for granted, and so when a book can capture seeing humanity from an outside perspective, this is just a theme that I love seeing explored, because it really kind of puts me in touch with what it is to be human. So I do think that if you like survival stories or stories that put into perspective the human experience, this is definitely a series that you would be interested in. I personally would recommend it. I think it's worth a shot. I have really enjoyed it myself. I'm really glad that I've read it and seen it the whole way through. I know a lot of people don't like the second book. So in my experience, what I would say is I would suggest binge reading the 3 books back to back so that you don't kind of feel that middle slump as much. If you haven't read the series yet and you can binge read them back to back, I think that that would be a good way to experience the full story. I would definitely recommend this to anyone that liked The Host by Stephanie Meyer. It is a very similar type of alien because these aliens do inhabit human bodies. We just aren't reading through the point of view of that type of a character like you were in The Host, but I do think there are some similarities between The Host and the Fifth Wave aliens. But the Fifth Wave is much more like military resistance, action-packed. I also have seen the movie adaptation of the Fifth Wave, and while I think that if you're a fan of the book that you would also enjoy the movie is definitely not as good as the book. I have seen it, I acknowledge that it exists, but it's not like the best movie adaptation that I've seen, so that's all I can really say about it. If you guys haven't read this one, let me know what you thought of it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the comments. Bye!